Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Yeah. While they fix this, my foray into lighting design was actually by fluke, by chance. I always wanted to be an architect, studied architecture, and one day I just decided to work with light. I have an image which I'll share during my presentation, but this entire journey of working with light has been a continuous learning. And what I am wanting to do is share my experiments, exploration, learning of light through some of my projects that we've worked on over the last 15, 20 years. Not necessarily the best, but somewhere close to my heart.
You can continue, I just update it.
I would need the images.
Okay.
So, after graduating, I happened to see a sound light show at a place called Kurukshetra. There was not, sorry, I can just, that place is just a lake with few trees and one big water tank. And yeah. So this is the photograph of the show. You can see the lake in front, one big water tank on the left, and lots of trees over there. And this is a 40-minute show, and I was amazed how light, along with sound, of course, managed to captivate the audience for 40 minutes. There was not much to light up, nothing of real significance. But light in itself managed to be the actor, the setting, it was a symbol, it was also setting the mood. Somewhere I realized how light can actually, it determines how we perceive the space. And with the temporal dynamic nature of light, we can actually keep changing the perception of that space. Light also adds to the experience and the atmosphere of the place. So all these years while studying architecture, I was exploring the mediums of form and space. Suddenly I discovered another medium of light, which I thought had this emotional charge to it, and it was more of a spiritual material. So these are a few images from the show which actually transformed or actually made me work with light, and that's the day I decided to start exploring this medium of light. This is an image, it's a Garbhagriha of a Hindu temple. Garbhagriha represents it represents the God's creation, the dark, infinite universe. And Garbhagriha is also, probably the name Garbh also comes from the womb. It's a universe in itself. It's a dark space completely disconnected from the outside world. And when we go into a Garbhagriha, all our senses are activated. When you walk barefoot, your feet are touching the stone. You walk in, you can smell the agarbatti. You can hear the bells, the aarti bells, the aarti chants. You're given the prasad, which you taste. And of course, there is light as well. But the way Garbhagriha is actually, the light in the Garbhagriha is worked out, it's a dark space with the light just in front of the idol, so that the entire focus is on the idol and nowhere else. Now, this is a journey up to the Garbhagriha, and the lighting is actually choreographed from the time you enter the temple. The outside, which is probably completely daylit, and then you have a colonnaded space with a roof, which kind of controls the light to some extent. And then the next zone, with more walls, you're controlling the light further till the time you reach the Garbhagriha, it's absolutely pitch dark. So there is this entire idea of how architecture is controlling and manipulating, choreographing the lit experience of the temple. And there is another interesting element over here. Our eye takes a while to adapt from a very bright space to a dark space. So this transition actually helps us to just accommodate or adjust to the light levels inside where we can see the flame but not the space itself, the dark space of the Garbhagriha. It's interesting how architecture has incorporated daylight in numerous ways. But another interesting project or case are the Charbagh Mughal gardens. They are, of course, the pleasure gardens. They were designed they were designed with these pavilions to actually take care of the heat, and also with the terraces, they had the water system to irrigate the channel, irrigate the landscape, and also to have fountains which would lower the temperature during the day. But they were also designed to be used in the evening. And how it really responded to the moonlight was most of the surface were white, reflecting the moonlight, and the flowering landscape. If you can see the white flowers over there, they would reflect the soft moonlight. That's how architecture and the landscape responded to moonlight as well. When we were asked to work on this particular project, these are Ghat Ki Guni gardens in Jaipur, we weren't sure how to actually approach this. How to create moonlight in a space without actually having a moon, and how do we actually generate light over here? So what we did was actually lit, this is the plan of the gardens. So we lit only the man-made structures and let the light reflect off those structures onto these landscape flowers, white flowers, which would reflect the light back. The intent was, so this is the image. Okay, these images seem to be very dark over here. So what we did was lit the inside, we lit the chhajjas of the pavilions, and the light was bounced off the chhajjas onto the landscape around. And that's how we actually created the moonlight. Here the idea was to create darkness rather than the light up the landscape itself. Again, the image is dark, but this is how the flowers and the landscape actually caught light and reflected the light back. I'm just going to skip these. Yeah. So the other project is Amar Fort in Jaipur again. It stands majestically on top of this hill, and whenever you cross this, you're always in awe of this monument. So we worked on the lighting and also the sound light show over here. So one response was actually to express the structure of the fort itself, how masculine it was, and how it would actually, the volume and the heights of the entire fort itself. But on the other hand, from inside, this fort is actually a collection of very intricate architectural spaces and details. Here, in fact, to an extent where the Rajputs actually tried to shy away from revealing the inside to the Mughals so that they don't get insecure about the kind of architecture. So there is this complexity in and contradiction within the architecture of Amar. From outside, it seems like a fort, and from inside, it's a palace. And through light, what we also wanted to explore was how we can actually make it appear like a jewel, glowing from inside. All the jharokas, jalis, the brass tips on top of the dome, and contrasting it against a blue light. I mean, again, the idea of using a blue light was to create a contrast, not just through the intensity of light, but also the color of the light. And again, there is a moment where this fort is lost in history. So what we try to do is actually kind of dissolve all the details, create like an eerie sense to the structure which exists. It's hovering around you like a bhumia, like a local ghost which they believe in, and you see the existence, you see the presence, but you don't see the details. But again, the choice of the color of the light was extremely important. One, blue makes the objects recede. And two, this structure is an off-white plastered finish. And an off-white off-white color is always going to reflect the off-white colors and absorb the complementary colors, which are the blues. So by using blue, we negated any whites, shades of whites or off-whites which could be there, or the yellows, and made the entire structure look blue and dissolve all the details. This is another project, a typical sales office for a property developer. So what the architect wanted to do was create a sales office. These are what most of these sales offices would look like. But the architect, Matra, they wanted to actually, they were very inspired by the entire process of construction, and they wanted to explore the idea of expressing the quarries and the entire construction system and express that through the interiors. So these are a few images from their presentation and the feel of what the space was going to be like. And this is how the space was organized. Now, interestingly, this sales office sat in a mall which is a place for fast consumption and immediate transaction. But when you go to a retail space, it's a place where you need to really slow down, where you're going to be spending money in crores. You need to take a decision very wisely. So for us, the challenge was how to make people slow down and also how to respond to the interiors. So what we came up was to actually have a museum-like quality to the space, where the entire emphasis is on the construction expression, the weight of the materials which have been used, the volume and the texture. But before that, we had to actually do a couple of mock-ups because the entire the space was designed as a sculpture rather than very permanent planned walls. So you see these are all thermocol cubes which were placed as a mock-up, and we had to go through an entire series of lighting mock-ups as well to figure out how we're going to light them up, the direction, how we're going to bring out the shadows, and what kind of color of light we're going to be using. So this entire project happened through series of these mock-ups where the final position of the light was also determined at site, and there were no drawings made for this. And a lot of these cubes had to be like moved around or repositioned to actually be able to achieve the impact of light that we wanted to achieve. And ultimately, this is the kind of layout, and also these dotted lines that you see over here is the track layout that we had to work with. So here is the images of the completed project where the concrete blocks, so thermocol blocks were covered with concrete to express the material, and we So again, I mean, the idea was to express the material, the tactile quality of the material, and the rawness of it. And this is the residency in Lucknow. This was the place where the British resident used to stay in the Oudh province. And sometimes we come across projects where the building itself has a story to tell. So this building was witness to the mutiny of 1857. A lot of Indians were trapped in there, and there was a lot of shooting that happened from outside, very similar to Jallianwala Bagh. Now, again, what we tried to explore was the material of the building, all Lakhori bricks, the texture of the bricks. And you also have these bullet marks on the facade itself. This building has been in a dilapidated state since then. So this is another view, another rendering of the palace, the residency, sorry. So again, intentionally, we used a particular color of light which would bring out the texture of the facade and also contrast it against the red. And if you look closely, every single mark of the bullet is visible. The dilapidated state of the facade is visible, and it was kind of making it evident, the cold-blooded massacre that happened there, and the details of the inside were kind of blurred with a very bright red light. Another expression of the form where we only get to see the skeleton of the structure, and rest, the body, the volume would just disappear. This is how the residency would generally appear. This is a view from actually a tent that we had pitched while working on this. We had spent a couple of nights, lots of nights actually, and that too in winters. And this is how we were actually working inside the tent. We had a supply of food and also a heater to take care of the winters. And we have little aloo being baked over there as food. And suddenly, while working on this, fog seemed to appear from nowhere. We stepped out, except for our tent, nothing else was visible, and most of the area was completely fogged out. All the details also disappeared. So for me, this was an experience which was completely unbelievable. And the entire space actually, for me, transformed into an arena. We thought we were in control of what we were doing, how we were manipulating the light and the building and the space. And suddenly the light took over the space and we felt like nothing. For me, it was an extremely mesmerizing experience and actually at the same time a very humbling one as well. So that's it.
Okay,